Ukraine, which is a candidate country and is negotiating, has done its homework, because that's the typical way the European Union treated previous candidates and still treats many candidates in the Western Balkans. This is the homework. We will hear from you when you are done with it.
Also a typically Dutch thing.
Very much so. And I think that one of the things that we can learn from all these experiences is that if you really genuinely want a country to join as fast as possible and in the best possible shape, you will help it actively to do the homework instead of when going back and say, well, let us know when you are done. And an example, for example, could be the labor market. If we want Ukraine to successfully enter as soon as possible, also, for example, our internal market, then let's make sure that the current labor market develops in such a way that it is easy to connect with our ways of protection of labor, wages, normal relations in a labor market, instead of it developing in the direction that, for example, the American Chamber of Commerce likes to see.
Yeah, so having steps in the right direction, be much more beneficial, quicker.
More proactive.
And I thank you very much, because we have a much more optimistic look on the face of your neighbor.
No,
you wanted to respond, Mr.
I actually want to disagree.
Oh no!
Respectfully.
You look so happy when you want to.
In the sense that I think the problem with the Western Balkans was not that the European Union didn't want to have them, with a couple of notable exceptions, but the problem was that they had, a number of the leaders in the Western Balkans had no desire whatsoever to do their homework. And in this case, homework is a nice metaphor, but it's a misleading term for reforms in rule of law, human rights, media freedoms, and all kinds of things which the European Union will continue to ask of Ukraine to do. And I think this is very good news in the sense that also Ukrainian young people and Ukrainian citizens want Ukraine to be a democratic country, as Andriy already said. So that this can happen faster, I think the European Union has already done some things with Ukraine faster than it has done with any candidate member states, with the exception of Finland and Sweden, that joined super fast. They were already quite ahead ready. But if you look, for example, if you compare Ukraine to Serbia, Serbia had several years between its given the questionnaire, the answers to the European Union in terms of how far is it from European Union law, and the actual candidate status start negotiations. With Ukraine, this happened for the European Union with lightning speed. Between February and June, the European Union actually received the answers to the Ukrainians, and then it gave a positive opinion on Ukrainian membership.
Yeah, so it showed the world that when there's geopolitical pressure, then things can happen much quicker. But what do you think?
Can I say two small things?
Yeah, you can, but I would also like to hear your response to the point that Thijs was making, that we should have much more benefit of moving towards the European Union quicker, which is something that the EU can do.
Not really,
Okay.
because the problem is that if you say that the only rationale is a geopolitical rationale, what you're actually saying is, never mind rule of law, never mind the chairman of the National Committee of Anti-Corruption, never mind the staffing of I don't think, we've seen also from Ukrainians, we've seen from Ukrainian Minister for European Integration, August Definition, that they actually are very much committed to doing those reforms. So what I'm saying, I'm not disagreeing with Thijs, but what I'm saying is, you cannot just say Ukraine will join in the best possible shape if it joins without the reforms. It should join.
Thijs, maybe you want to explain what you did say.
No, but I think we do to a large extent agree. Of course. First of all, there's a big difference between Ukraine as it is and some of the other candidate status, because in my opinion, not only during fighting a war, but also before that, Ukraine was already in a better shape than some people think, in terms of, not in terms of the factual reforms and the rule of law and corruption, etc., but in terms of having a proper middle class, having a developed civil society, having also some industries that even the European Union countries are jealous of. So I believe that it will take a couple of years, but I believe that Ukraine is going many aspects. But you are right, of course, that the comparison is maybe not in all aspects the right one. But the European Union after Thessaloniki 2003, we are committed to the European part, etc., etc. I'm hearing that now every half a year from summits with the Western Balkan countries, and I'm getting sick and tired of it. I want to see political commitment, and that's my second response to you, because yes, you are right, it happened with lightning speed, but I'm also always very skeptical and afraid of hypocrisy. Because yes, there were a lot of European member states that wanted to join the choir and say, no, we have to do this, and Ukraine is, but do you really mean it? Do you really mean it? Because we also heard afterwards President Macron saying it's not going to happen in 50 years. So, I mean, we have to fight that collectively. The hypocrisy, but also keeping everybody committed on the right track.
Thank you very much. This is the second block, and I also want to hear the two other speakers. So, André, for you, firstly, the question, you already spoke a little bit about it when you opened. What are your expectations? If you could just tell us, what do you expect from the European Union to help for the future of Ukraine?
First, it's of course it's now supporting the current conflict what are doing in Ukraine, and for show all world that democracy are stronger, and show to all world that democracy is the right way. And second, we also we getting experience also from European Union, from European countries about a lot of things. And very important now, I think it's also make each other experience. Also, very nice to cooperation with universities. For example, some Ukrainian universities and European. And it's very important. It's first, it's help our mentality make search more similarity. And
So universities, maybe like public administration or companies, all kinds of exchange is what you want to see.
Of course, yes. I just mean.
And were there other things that you expect? Because you can tell us now.
I think about European Union, yeah. It's about these issues.
Okay, thank you very much. And also, I'd like to ask Mr. Fred Soames. You already said you had some things left in your pocket to explain more, but could you also see the European Union play a major role as like a beacon of upholding international law, international human rights on a global stage, and then letting that be part of the agenda of supporting Ukraine?
Yes, well, a lot was said that I have few comments on just now about what the issues are within the European Union's organs, Parliament, but also the Commission and in fact the member states. And with the upcoming elections, of course, there is concern. I'm a bit more optimistic, I think, than you, Professor Dimitrova. In the Dutch Parliament, we still have a big majority that is fully supporting of Ukraine. And it may be that there will be more members of Parliament, for the European Parliament elected, who are not supportive of Ukraine, but I think they will still remain in a minority. But so the sobering comments I think that you made were useful. Personally, I'm ultimately optimistic, but it's not a question of just being optimistic, it's a question of working on this, and I think we all, in all member states, and also we as citizens in the Netherlands, we simply have an obligation to think about the effects of the elections, the parties we vote for, and what we expect from them, and the leadership that we hope to get from the political leaders. Now, important is that, of course, the European Union remains fully supportive of Ukraine in many respects. But the question you just asked brings me to a thing that has been that I have been sort of thinking of and that concerns me greatly when you look at the current developments in the world and the role of the European Union perhaps there is that um, we are now witnessing a situation or a couple of situations where there are basic values reflected in law, in international law, existential rules that are being violated. And the question is, how far can, for instance, Russia, in our case, get away with this now? Of course, that must be prevented, must be stopped. And it's completely correct that the Netherlands, European Union, member states all point out these all kinds of violations by Russia, and that we, for instance, also want to support in the United Nations General Assembly, because the problem is that the Security Council, which has the main role for international peace and security, cannot be effective because of the Russian veto in the Security Council. So there's a defect here in the UN Charter that must be corrected at some time, and hopefully this will help the world to perhaps get agreement on that. But what we've seen in the past, when the European states point out violations of international law, that and want African, Latin American, and Asian states to also express their concern about these violations of international law, that we seem to apply double standards. And not only seem to apply, we have been applying double standards, also the Netherlands, continuously, notwithstanding all kinds of statements from our Prime Minister or other members of Cabinet. There is an application of double standards, and this is now coming to haunt us. If you want, indeed, an international order based on international law, you have to be consistent. You cannot apply those standards. So my sort of hope in this terrible situation that we are in at the moment, and we're now focusing on Europe, but there are other areas of the world where similar issues are happening, is that governments and politicians and members of parliament, but also the public, fully starts to understand the importance of upholding international law without applying double standards.
Thank you very much. Nice segue. And applause. I'm looking at the organization for somebody to help out with another microphone because we want to open up to the audience in just a second. But I also was looking over at Mr. Van der Tochten. We spoke about Klingendahl all the way at the beginning. And we were going to ask Klingendahl, okay, what kind of foreign policy ideas would you have for Ukraine and everything, but now we're talking about the European Union's policies towards Ukraine. That happens to be also an area where you're very specialized in. So is there anything you heard that you want to say, okay, this particular point I want to make, and then we also hear from the rest of you if you want to have any questions to the panel or specific remarks. Mr. Tony van der Top, if you would like to stand, he's from Klingendahl. It's nice that you're here. There you go.
Thank you very much. Thanks for asking. Well, I'm not a specialist on Ukraine. Julia would have done much better, but unfortunately she's ill. I would like to mention 2 points, basically. One is what the European Union could do better. I know 3 of my colleagues are working on an op-ed. It will be published quite soon. And that is, it's an argument as a matter of urgency, to work towards, increasing European defense industry with long-term contracts, and also to make sure that Ukraine gets more ammunition, gets more air defense missiles, things like that.
And we get more autonomy, probably.
And we get maybe also more autonomy, because this is a matter of urgency also because what's happening in the United States right now. So this is one of the points which my colleagues are addressing. Another point is a paper they wrote a bit earlier to involve Ukraine already now more in European security and defense policy. So to have Ukraine on the table in these discussions, because it implies both, has consequences both for Ukraine and for us. And the final point about, and there I really have to commend ABBA for doing all this work. What we have seen, we're doing at Clinadel opinion polls every year. It's called the annual polls called Between Hope and Fear. To poll in the Netherlands what are the main challenges and fears, but also the biggest hopes. And last year, a lot was about the effects of the war in Ukraine, about Russia. It's what we call the Russia shock. Now it's more about the Hamas shock. It's more about the Middle East and all kind of spin-offs of that. So I think it's very important thing to keep the war in Ukraine on the agenda. Because you see also in public opinion, gradually the interest is decreasing. Obviously, we cannot handle more than one crisis at a time, so it focuses on other matters, and therefore we have to keep that very high on the agenda, also when we are going into the European elections.
And by being here, you prove that it counts for you as well. So thank you very much, Mr. Yes.